Hey everyone, and welcome to today's study. Today, we are diving into a genuinely fascinating topic. We're going to be doing a full summary of a highly intricate YouTube video called When is the 9th of Av 2026 by the channel Ty Green. And just a quick heads up right at the start, there's a link to the original source material right below this video in the description. So let's just dive right in. The source presents this super specific argument that weaves together biblical timekeeping, historical astronomy, and ancient history. It is absolutely packed with data, so we're going to map it all out together so you can easily follow the creator's exact logic. Our main goal for this study is to impartially break down Ty Green's captivating calendar calculations, his historical references, and ultimately his concluding theological message. We're talking about navigating ancient texts, gazing up at the alignment of the stars, and walking through some of the most pivotal and frankly tragic moments in human history. We're just here to lay out exactly what Ty Green presents in his research, step by step. We want to make sure his complex mix of astronomical math and historical analysis is incredibly easy to understand so you can evaluate it for yourself.
So here is our roadmap for the study. Number 1, the calendar discrepancy. 2, clues in the constellations. 3, calculating the true date. 4, history of the 9th of, and finally number 5, a message of salvation.
Okay, Section 1, the calendar discrepancy, a shift in time. This brings us right to the central conflict of the source's investigation, the official Hebrew calendar dates. Now, standard, widely accepted calendars like Hebcal list the 9th of Av for the year 2026 as beginning on the evening of July 22nd. To hit that specific date, the new moon would technically have to be sighted in the constellation of Cancer, but Ty Green argues this standard date is actually dead wrong. He points out that current standard dates rely heavily on the Hillel II calendar, which is a mathematical system established way back during the Jewish exile. Why does that matter? Well, originally, months were declared by an active Sanhedrin, a high court in Jerusalem, based on physical witnesses actually seeing the new moon in the sky. But when the Jewish people were scattered into exile, they needed a predetermined mathematical formula. They had to ensure everyone observed feasts on the same days, even without a functioning Sanhedrin or a standing temple to verify the moon. The source explains that while this math was an absolute necessity for survival at the time, over thousands of years, it slowly drifted completely out of sync with the actual physical gears of space. Because of this drift, Ty Green calculates the true date should actually be a full month later, hitting on August 21st to 22nd.
To back up this massive claim about a drifting calendar, the creator pulls in an interview with Rabbi Adam Eliyahu Berkowitz, an author who has deeply studied Jewish law and tradition. Berkowitz explains that the calendar was originally supposed to be based on literal sightings of the moon, but because Judaism had to build these massive protective walls around its traditions to survive the exile, institutional change just happens incredibly slowly. Without an active Sanhedrin to officially declare the new moons based on visual evidence, the Jewish calendar has essentially remained static. It's relying on Hillel's ancient mathematical formula instead of what's actually happening in the sky. Ty Green uses this exact perspective to establish his whole premise. The official paper calendar is fundamentally out of sync with astronomical reality, and that gives him the foundation to totally recalculate the date himself.
Moving on to Section 2, clues in the constellations, astronomy, not astrology. So if the math on the paper calendar is wrong, how in the world do we find the right time? Well, according to the source, we have to actually look up at the sky. Now, Ty Green is super quick to clarify to his audience that what he's doing here is absolutely not astrology. He's not looking for horoscopes or hidden mystical meanings. Not at all. Instead, he is practicing biblical astronomy, grounding it firmly in Genesis chapter 1, verse 14. The big takeaway here is that the original biblical calendar is luno-solar. That means the literal positioning of the sun, the moon, and the stars serve as the tangible gears of this massive cosmic clock. A clock designed to dictate signs, seasons, days, and years. In this ancient system, you don't just look at a printed piece of paper to find the correct month. You have to observe which specific star constellation the new moon physically appears in.
To figure out the correct month of Av, Ty Green actually reconstructs specific astronomical alignments directly from ancient historical texts. He references a foundational rabbinical text called the Sefer Yetzirah and pairs it with the writings of the famous first-century historian Flavius Josephus. By combining these accounts, he builds a really specific astronomical map. If we look at the historical records, the first month of the biblical year is confirmed when the new moon is sighted in Aries. Fast forward to the 5th month, the month of Av, which is the big target month here, and the new moon must be sighted exactly in Leo. Finally, the 7th month, Tishrei, which kicks off the highly important Feast of Trumpets, aligns with Libra. The creator insists that observing these very specific constellation alignments is the true, ancient, and most accurate method for determining the biblical New Year. But Ty Green doesn't just stop at historians and rabbinical texts. He also seeks New Testament confirmation for this celestial map, pointing directly to Revelation chapter 12, verse 1, which describes a wonder appearing in heaven. He argues that the woman mentioned in this verse represents the constellation of Virgo, and the detail about the moon under her feet, that is the absolute key. Astronomically speaking, placing the moon right at the feet of Virgo puts it directly into the adjacent constellation of Libra. Ty Green points out that this specific visual alignment in the night sky happens every single year during the Feast of Trumpets, right on the first day of the 7th month. For him, this biblical passage is absolute proof that his historical mapping, specifically tying that 7th month to Libra, is flawlessly accurate.
Which brings us to Section 3, Calculating the True Date, Finding Av.
All right, with the mechanics of this cosmic clock firmly established, we can follow the source's math to pinpoint exactly when the 9th of Av falls in 2026. Let's build this step by step. Step 1. Confirm the very first month of the year by cross-checking it with the alignment of the 7th month. You're making sure the moon is indeed in Libra for the Feast of Trumpets. Once the overall year is locked in, step 2 is to proceed to the 5th month, Av. By tracking the sky ahead to the year 2026, Ty Green notes that the new moon will physically appear in Leo on the evening of August 12th, going into the 13th. That physical sighting right there, that becomes the unshakable anchor point. And step 3 is just simple arithmetic. You add exactly 9 days to that new moon sighting to reach the 9th day of the month of Av.
And here is the grand conclusion of the calculation portion of our study. By adding those 9 days to the August 12th new moon in Leo, Ty Green determines that the true 9th of Av in 2026 actually begins on the evening of August 21st and runs through August 22nd. This final date is a stark full 1-month difference from the standard Hibcow date in July. It's a massive discrepancy, and it's entirely driven by the creator's decision to ditch the mathematical Hillel second calendar and return to visual astronomical sightings.
Section 4, History of the 9th Av, a Day of Tragedy.
So you might be wondering, why does pinning down this exact date matter so much to the creator? Well, it all comes down to the immense historical weight of Tisha B'Av, which is universally regarded as the saddest, most tragic day in the entire Jewish calendar. The source provides a pretty sobering list of historical tragedies mysteriously bound to this exact time of year. It's the day the biblical spies returned to Moses with a bad report, leading to 40 years of wandering. Even more mind-blowing, it's the day both the first Holy Temple by the Babylonians and the second Holy Temple by the Romans were completely destroyed. These two devastating losses took place roughly 655 years apart, yet they fell on the exact same calendar day. The 9th of Av also marks the loss of the Battle of Betar, the Romans brutally plowing over the Temple Mount, the forced expulsion of Jews from England and later Spain, and it even aligns with the entry into World War I, a war that reshaped global borders and set the stage for World War II. Ty Green emphasizes this incredibly heavy history to suggest that, given the volatile times we live in today, this specific date could hold immense prophetic importance in the near future.
Which leads us to our final section, number 5, A Message of Salvation, the source's conclusion. Now, all of this deep historical and prophetic anticipation triggers a major pivot in the source material. The creator intentionally transitions away from tracking the stars and recounting catastrophes, moving directly into a really passionate personal religious appeal. Ty Green uses this verse from James chapter 4 to bridge the gap between global history and personal urgency. He warns his viewers that the world is rapidly transitioning into very difficult times. His underlying message is that, sure, humanity can endlessly track calendars and try to anticipate historical events, but tomorrow is ultimately not promised to any of us. Life, as the verse says, is just a vapor. Because life is so fragile, the source strongly urges the audience to use their time wisely right now and secure their spiritual standing before tragedy strikes. This intense sense of urgency leads right into Ty Green's core theological message, firmly rooted in Christian scripture. Quoting the book of Ephesians, the source explains his belief that humanity basically owes a spiritual debt for sin that it simply cannot pay on its own. The crucial point the creator wants the audience to take away here is his firm stance that salvation is never something you can earn through good works, charity, or personal righteousness. Rather, he asserts that salvation is a completely free gift of God's grace, provided solely through the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. Building on that, the creator really emphasizes the extreme compassion and accessibility of this theology. He quotes the book of Titus to show that people don't need to perfectly clean up their lives or fix all their mistakes before seeking salvation. As Ty Green puts it, humanity is a mess. We're sometimes foolish, disobedient, and struggling. But it's the sheer kindness, love, and mercy of God toward humanity that brings salvation, not our own righteous acts. The source stresses that believers are called to come to the Savior exactly as they are, in this very moment, relying completely on God's mercy rather than trying to present a perfect resume of good deeds.
The source concludes this deep theological appeal with a very clear, final call to action, utilizing Romans 10:9. Ty Green summarizes that receiving this ultimate gift of salvation requires a specific, personal response, believing in your heart that God raised Jesus from the dead and confessing that truth with your mouth. For the Creator, sharing this gospel message is the entire overriding purpose of understanding the times, the seasons, and the calendars in the first place. He desperately wants his audience to be spiritually prepared for what he calls the day of redemption and the glorious appearing of Christ.
And that brings our full summary study of Ty Green's research to a close. We have thoroughly unpacked the complexities and mathematical drift of the ancient Hillel II calendar. We've explored how the source uses texts like the Sefer Yetzirah, Josephus, and the Book of Revelation to anchor the month of Av directly to the constellation of Leo. And we've examined the utterly devastating, repeating history of Tisha B'Av and how all of this propels the Creator's urgent, faith-based call for personal salvation. It really is an undeniably fascinating intersection of astronomy, ancient history, and intense personal faith. It leaves us with a highly compelling thought to ponder as we go about our day. If long-standing human traditions and paper calendars can potentially obscure actual time, what else might history and the stars be waiting to reveal to us? Thank you so much for joining me in this study today, and keep exploring.